Hi, I'm with Thor Ferguson of the Wild Heathen Wolf Pack. It's Gothy. Now, mind the little noise of the birds and my dogs and stuff, and maybe the goats if you could hear them. Today we're actually going to do a video on something that's very overlooked in the heathen community, right? So, we're going to talk about community building and its real cost. So what I mean by that, right? Let's say you want to host a bloat. You want to celebrate summer solstice, you want to celebrate Yule, Samhain, something, whatever, right? Put your holiday where you want to put it. And understanding that the challenges that come with actually hosting a bloat of some sort, right? As you can hear the goats back there, they have a little topic to add to that as well. Anyways, today we're actually going to talk about what those burdens, when I say burdens, I say the challenges, both financial, mental, and even just, some of the things that don't really get talked about in the heathen community. Just things that need to get talked about when it comes to actually making a bloat, hosting a bloat, or anything like that. So, I got myself a good little beer right here. Maybe you should probably grab yourself a drink as well. And we can actually talk about this actual topic at hand. So, without ado, let's get on with it. Damn dogs. Anyways, don't mess with my rabbits. They'll be right. Anyways, so what's the first thing you have to do about doing a bloat, right? And you want to actually invite your community to a bloat event that you're hosting, right? So we gotta plan it first, right? So when it comes to planning an event, right? Think of like the bloat you're about to do. So let's say we're gonna do Ostara, for example, right? Well, actually, we'll start with an easier one, right? Let's say we're gonna do a Thor's blot. Thor's blot's pretty easy, right? Now, this also has its own unique challenges as well, right? So, the big thing with a Thor's blot, and any blot that you want to invite people over to, you gotta feed the people that are coming to you, right? So, if you're gonna have this around like a dinner time, or if you're gonna have like a lunch, breakfast seems a little early, but if you want to do it that way, that's by all means. You gotta plan for what kind of food you're gonna have, right? So, now for a Thor's blot, if you want to do that, which is usually around like July 27th, 28th time frame, right? You do that with nothing but meat, and meat only. So if you have vegetarians or vegans, well, I'm not saying they can't partake, but they're gonna be surrounded by meat. However, there's nothing to say that you can't actually have like an actual vegetarian dish for them if you're actually accommodating those kind of people, right? So understanding your community that you're accommodating for, because this is gonna be one of those things that it's gonna take a lot of your financial time and your personal energy as well. So when it comes to actually planning this thing, plan accordingly. Plan to who you're actually going to have over. So, one thing being the food itself, right? Now, the next part I would say, what kind of goes without saying, is the bloat itself, right? So, for example, with a Thor's bloat, is like we mentioned earlier, you require to get a lot of food in it, a lot of meat in particular. But you also want like an animal pelt for the end of it, right? So, here's simply how a Thor's bloat goes, is you gather everyone around, and you cook up all this meat. You have all this meat on this table, and of course, as people are eating the meat, you tell a story of Thor's encounter with Ulkar Loki. And of course, whenever he actually was with Loki and his servant, and of course, talking about the challenges, and you tell the whole story of how he tried to kill a giant, but he couldn't kill a giant. He was crashing mountains and doing so, and draining rivers, and lifting up Yomungun at the same time. And you gotta tell this whole story while everyone's eating, right? And of course, at the end of it, all the bones that you get from like the chicken and the pork and things like that, you actually put it in the actual animal pelt. And the reason why you do this is because in the story though, he kills the actual goats, and of course he tells the actual people, or the family that he's at, he says, hey, put the bones back on the actual pelt and I can bring this goat back to life. And of course, Loki convinces one of the children to actually break the bone and suck the marrow out, and of course, whenever he brought the goat back, he had a lame leg. And he was very furious. And of course, for the price of that, those children became servants of his. Now, there's a version of the story where one of them actually confesses, says, I did it. I am sorry, Thor. And of course, he actually commends him for his courage for standing up for his family and stuff like that. Now, as far as that goes, you got to write down your affirmation. You got to write down the whole story too, right? Now, I don't know about you, but when it comes to telling stories like that, sometimes you should probably write it down verbatim so you can actually not only look back on it and actually read it and make sure you don't miss anything, but also make sure you're saying some of the things right. So some of the names for the giants and stuff might be a little difficult to actually partake and actually, well, not partake, but actually explain and pronunciate. So do your best on that, right? And of course, write it down, prepare it. That's actually a good thing too, right? Is one of the things that actually helps out is kind of going like a dry run. Do like a dry run as far as like the bloat goes, right? Now you don't necessarily have to pour the meat into the horn or anything like that in the actual dry run. However, you can still actually like read up and says, all right, and you kind of do like a little to yourself, right? Maybe before people come, maybe to the side. Preferably before people come, because if you're hosting a bloat, you gotta be hospitable, right? Or hospitable. Anyways, but you actually gotta accommodate the people who are actually coming. So be prepared to extend hospitality to those who actually come to your bloat as well. Now, what I mean by that is, whenever, and this is what I personally like to do as well, as long as many are go these as well, is, well, I have dogs. So whenever someone's at the door, they let me know someone's at the door. So I could actually come up there and actually go outside, welcome in and say, hey, I'm with our Ferguson. If you forget that, I'm Josh. It's all good, And then we could actually, invite them in, be cordial, say, hey, the food's over here. Hey, the bathroom's over here. Can I take your coat? Be hospitable. Be hospitable. Be a good host. Be a good host. Just like you expect someone, when you go to someone else's house, that they would do the same to you. So now with that being said, hospitality is a two-way street. Like I always say, if someone's being a good host, you got to be a good guest. Even when not being a good host, you still be a good guest. So, with that being said, though, too, right? But with that being too, right, is we also got to invite people. Now, understanding the people that you're actually inviting. Now, sometimes people like to really host events that are very select. No one, except for people that they know, are allowed. Because if this is in your own home, you want to know who's coming into your home, right? Now, I also offer it to people that I don't always know, right? Now, I'm not saying some Joe Schmo off the street, right? I allow people to bring guests if they want to, right? And of course, they act accordingly. Usually they understand what heathen is, and if they don't, that's fine. Because sometimes, people want to see what a bloat is, So understand that not everyone, if you decide to extend it outside of your immediate circle, may not exactly know what a bloat is. So what I personally like to do as well is, when I do a bloat, I like to explain the bloat that's about to happen. I like to explain like the procedures of everything. Like, hey, when I give the affirmation, take a sip, and then I pass it around. And once everyone passes it around, and I make sure that to note that, hey, leave a little bit for the actual offering bowl itself. Now, if we run out, then we can refill it real quick, and that's not a big deal, right? So giving like a little, I don't want to say like safety brief, like maybe like a bloat brief, if you will, could be as well. Now, with that being said, if you're actually going to have, again, this goes back to inviting people and knowing who you're actually inviting. If you have someone who's a recovering alcoholic, or someone who's allergic to meat, alcohol, or just the germaphobe of any sort, have a non-alcoholic option. So that's always a good thing too, right? Or even offer the fact that, hey, we have a non-alcoholic option, or if you want to drink out of your own cup, that's fine too, right? As long as they do it in a respectful manner, right? Now, like, I mean, if you made an affirmation to Odin, and then next they say, make an affirmation to Tom Cruise for whatever reason, then that might be a little disrespectful, right? So now that we actually talked about the food, the bloat, and inviting people as well, here comes the next part, the bloat itself, right? Now, what happens when everyone shows up? Well, when everyone shows up, then guess what? The bloat happens, you eat food, and when it comes to actually doing the bloat as well, let people meander. Let people kind of socialize. Don't make it necessarily a super business casual kind of deal. Like, give people time to actually not only get to know each other, because sometimes strangers are meeting for the first time. Not only strangers are meeting for the first time, but these are relationships that you are actually having being made. You're having relationships. You're community building. It's not necessarily the bloat actually does help bring a community together, but when we're actually eating and having social drinking, or even just enjoying each other's company, that's when the actual real community building really starts. Is the bloat the main thing? Yeah, sure, it is the main thing, but we also can't take away from the fact of the actual socializing before and after the bloat. So whenever the bloat's over, I don't just kick everyone out. Say, hey, the bloat's over, but hey, you may stay as long as you like. We still have food. We still have, some drinks, things like that. And you can leave at your own convenience, stuff like that, right? Now, understand that pagan time is a real thing. So when it comes to pagan time, as people like to call it, is kind of like arriving at like fashionably late, if you will. that's pretty much the best way I can describe it, right? Is when it comes to like pagan time, as people like to call it, when they arrive fashionably late, is don't get too hard set on setting a bloat. What I mean by that is, if you want people to show up at 7, and you want the people to the bloat to start at 8 on the dot, well, understand that things happen, and people live pretty far away, and often sometimes, things happen. People get stuck in traffic or something like that, right? So that's where like the whole socializing kind of comes in play in your favor, right? So also use your intuition when people are kind of getting to the point where like, hey, when's this thing about to start? Then you should that's about that time when you should probably start that, right? Is understand that read the room. Read the room that you are in. Read the room that you're hosting. If someone's not having a good time, well, you should probably look into why they're not having a good time. Now, if someone's having a little too much alcohol, a little too much drink, a little too much courage juice, or dum-dum juice, then you could probably cut that person off. Because understand that this is your house or place of event that you're hosting, right? You got to take charge of it. You actually got to be in charge of the actual event that you're hosting. So with that being said, though, too, is understanding that you want this to be an enjoyable experience for everyone, right? You want this to be enjoyable for those who are partaking in the bloat itself, and not exactly waste everyone's time either. So we also understand that pagan time is kind of factually showing up late. We also kind of got to move it along a little bit too. So hypothetically speaking, you're hosting a bloat, and someone says, hey, I'm on my way right now. Or, hey, I'm going to be like an hour late. Can this bloat wait for them? Probably ask yourself that question, right? Now, if, for example, if you want people to show up at 7, and you're kind of picturing the bloat to start around like 8:15, 8:30, and it's like 8:45, and then they're like, hey, I'm about to be an hour, I'm just starting to leave my house. You could probably start that already. What else at that point too? It's understanding that pagan time, we all have it, or we all have somewhat of a good understanding of it, but at the same time, we also got to understand that people got places to go, and people want to go home at some point. Now, if everyone's having a good time, they're socializing, and it doesn't seem like time's really passing by, then, again, you got to read the room. You got to read the room when it comes to hosting a bloat. Now, you could also make an announcement that the bloat's about to begin, and that's what I like to do, right? So, I personally will say, hey, we're getting ready to start the bloat here in about like 5-10 minutes. So it's not like, right now kind of thing, because someone might have to go to the bathroom, or they got to change the diaper of a kid, because if you have a family-friendly event, then, kids are going to be managed to and taken care of, and sometimes they got to round up the little ones. So keep those things in mind. Now, and then you actually start the bloat, and the bloat goes well and all that stuff. Now, here's a little scenario for you. What if no one shows up? I'll let you, marinate on that one for a minute. What if no one shows up? What if no one shows up to the bloat that you spent all your time and energy in to actually not only try to bring the community together, try to honor Thor, try to honor Odin. You cooked all this food. You spent this money on the food. You fired up the grill. And you cooked all these chicken legs and pork chops and lamb chops and steaks. And no one shows up. Or not enough people showed up. Not a lot of people show up. That's okay. I'm going to tell you why that's okay. So, there's been quite a few bloats that I've done, especially in the beginning of all this, it was just me. It was just me. I'd offer it to people, say, hey, I'm about to host a bloat this day at this time, and they don't show. That's okay. Sometimes life happens. Sometimes people are not going to work. Sometimes they forget. And sometimes it's just, it happens. So, here's what you don't do when that happens. Don't go on social media and says, oh my goodness, why didn't no one show up to my bloat? Oh my God, I did all this and my grill and this and this wings are so good. I spent my heart in. Don't do that. If you want no one to show up the next time, that's how that happens. So don't get mad. Do not get mad at all. Because understand it is no one's really obligated to actually go to one of your bloats. Not by law, unless they swore an oath, which that'd be kind of weird. They swore an oath to go to your bloat. That'd be kind of weird, to be honest. But with that being said, life happens. People forget. Sometimes it is fault, sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's give you a chance that you probably didn't advertise it that well. Or you didn't remind people that was going to happen the day prior, right? So it could be a myriad of things. But what happens though is, let's say no one shows up. Then let's say you make a post that say, hey, the bloat went well. The food was fantastic. And I'm happy that we had an opportunity to actually host this bloat. Thank you all for who showed their support, whether they showed up or not. Reason being is because, hey, if no one showed up and he or she, whatever, Pikachu, actually made a nice thank you post after the fact, they're like, okay, maybe I actually got to go to this next time. Maybe I actually got to go to this event. Maybe I got to see what these bullets are actually done. Now, let's say one person shows up. Well, hey, guess what? That one person showed support to you. You thank them. You say, hey, thanks for showing up. I appreciate your time, appreciate the effort it took for you to get out here. I hope you felt good here in this bloat. I hope you, felt like you belonged here, and you thank them, right? Be hospitable. And of course, the thing is, too, is another little aspect that I kind of forgot to mention is heathens are not really a super trustworthy group. We are very much we got to get a real vibe for you. We got to actually see who you really are. We got to see, we don't trust easily. So if no one showed up or one person showed up, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that, no one showed up and you guys are awful. You guys said you would show up. Like, what messages does that send to the rest of the community? Let's say you did that on Facebook, Instagram, whatever. What does that look like to you when you're blowing your casket all over the people because they didn't show up? And sometimes they don't. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do. Because life does happen. Again, just think of it this way. You host a Thor bloat. You make all this food. You do the bloat anyways. From start to finish. Goes off without a hitch. You put the bones that you had into the pelt. Pulled up and offer it to nature. And guess what? Your bloat was successful. You still completed the bloat to the end. You still made an offering to the gods. You still made an offering to Thor. You still completed your bloat. You still did what you said you were going to do. And understand that, whether it's one person, just you and your wife, or, husband or whatever, or if it's 100, maybe 100 people, that's kind of crazy. Hey, if you got that, that's cool. But, understand that, and these things do take a lot of work. They take a lot of work, they take a lot of time, they take a lot of energy. It's a lot of trial and error that involved in actually making bloats as well, right? So understand that having a good, close, kindred community, people who come to your bloats regularly and socialize with you, this takes time. This takes time. And again, if one person showed up or if no person shows up and you went from start to finish, completed the bloat, you're successful. And again, many of my bloats, when I first started this, it was just me, myself, and I, and this little Mjolnir, and a little thing of beer, right? You're still doing a bloat. You're still offering to the gods. And it's still successful nonetheless. So, if no one shows up, don't get discouraged. And let's say you host a second bloat, and no one shows up or less people show up from now on than the previous one, don't get discouraged. Sometimes finances happen. Sometimes, things get in the way of things, but it's okay. Now, if you keep showing a positive attitude and you actually keep offering these things to people to show up, when one person shows up and they start telling people, hey, it was actually pretty cool, there wasn't really people there, but it was nice. He prepared his food, and more people like heathens talk. Heathens talk quite a bit. And when one person talks good about you, they start talking good about you with other people. And then they start talking good about you. And then, of course, they start coming to the bloats. And then they start feeling welcome. And then next thing you know, you actually start building a community. It's slow. It's a slow burn. And it starts with one. You. It all starts with you. And the reason why it starts with you is because you got to know how to do the bloat, right? Or you got to make the bloat. You got to write the bloat down. You got to make the offering. You got to provide the space for it. So, communities are not built overnight. Long times does it take for communities to be built. Hell, my community is still being built as we speak. Even though we have quite a few people who actually go into our actual bloats and stuff, we're still building. We're still getting more people in. We're still doing more holidays. We're still doing more affirmations to the gods and stuff. So, it is one of those things. Now, one thing too, go to other communities' bloats. Go to other kindred's bloats. So what I mean by that, and again, and I've traveled quite a bit, right? I remember one of the groups down in Georgia, I went to one of their bloats, and they were talking about how COVID just really did a number on that group, and then they were finally able to celebrate Yule after the fact. Understand that it can happen to the best of communities. It can happen to the best of people. That for some reason or another, they get pushed back. Financially, economically, sickness happens health-wise. A myriad of things could happen that actually would push a person back or a kindred back to actually be able to practice not only their bloats, but also bring communities together. So never get discouraged. Never get discouraged, because you could always build. You can always build, and you can learn from the mistakes of, not necessarily mistakes of other kindred, well, I mean that too. You can see what other communities do right, and you can see other ways that you'd rather do it a certain other way. Mind that mosquito? I know that mosquito's big, right? It's Alaska for you. Anyways, but learn from other people. Learn from other gothies. Learn from other kindreds. Be a student. Be a student how to do a bloat. And understand that the first time you do a certain bloat is probably not going to be the same way you do it with your 100th bloat. Because you're going to have your own flavor, your own spicy method of actually doing a bloat. Now, it doesn't mean you got to chop fingers off and whatever crap like that, but you're going to find your own flavor, your own style. So, and understand that not all of our bloats are bangers. I remember, I'm specifically telling you a little specific story real quick though. One time I actually did a bloat to also Thor, the one we were talking about too. And it wasn't the one where it was like the Feast of Thor or anything. It was to Thor and his wife Sif. And of course I, didn't really do too great as far as doing an affirmation of Sif. And I got a message from Thor immediately following, and he wasn't too thrilled with that. But, and with that being said, try it again. I did the affirmation to Sif, and I actually wrote it down, and I actually really looked into Sif, and I actually really studied and made a relationship happen. And I redid it again. It was a lot better at that time. I almost goofed it twice, actually. So, understand that when you feel like a bloat's good, it's good. When you feel like the bloat was, it was probably that. But that doesn't mean that if you feel like the bloat could have been better, there's nothing saying that you can't do it again. Or go back to the drawing board and say, hey, I want to try this one next time. Or I want to do it this way the next time. Or maybe I don't need to do this next time. Something along the lines of that. That's where you start writing your own bloats as well. You actually start understanding how bloats are really written. So, keep an understanding with that. Now, with that being said too, is a bloat is an offering. It's also kind of a sacrifice at the same time, right? So understand that when it comes to actually hosting bloats for other people, like we were talking about earlier, planning for food, libations, your money that you got to buy for the food. If you're making mead, how much time it actually takes to actually brew your own mead. There's a lot of things that actually come into a factor when it comes to actually hosting a bloat. So there's a lot of time, energy, money. It requires sacrifice to some degree. I'm not saying you got to chop off your fingers and do bloodletting or weird things like that. But, however, you're going to have to commit. There is a commitment to it. So if your first bloat's kind of not that great, hey, learn from the mistake. Learn what you did wrong or what could be done better. Because it's not always something as black and white as like, super wrong or whatever. Maybe you actually get, some UPG from Odin or something like that. You'd be like, hey, maybe next time, try it this way. Learn. Be a student. Be a student. All right? So, with that being said, our topic will be moving forward from the actual shortcomings of a bloat that you may have done. Whether it's people didn't show up, you kind of didn't perform the bloat to the best of your ability, you may have fumbled your words a little bit. Learn, and have a positive attitude. You gotta have a positive attitude about all of this. Reason being is because you're not gonna be, this takes practice. This takes practice, time, and energy. Kind of like the actual theme of this whole thing, right? The real cost of it all. It's gonna take a lot out of you. Now, it's not gonna be all at one time. It's kind of like a slow burn, like building a community. Slow burns, right? So, now with that being said, though, too, one bloat at a time. One bloat at a time. When you're doing these, focus on the bloat that you're about to do. Don't worry about, if it's summer solstice, don't worry about Yule. Unless you already got the ones you already got down and you like it the way you want to go. Don't be stressing about Yule when you're in June. You probably shouldn't be stressing about that too much anyways. That's some time away. Or, if you're actually doing a summer solstice bloat of some sort, don't be worrying about next year's Samhain. So, worry about the bloat that's happening right now. So, with that being said, I think I kind of hit the nail on the head here. I beat the dead horse. I think we got what we need to talk about here today. So, with that being said, one bloat at a time, and as always, stay heathen.